I love reading, but that hasn't always been the case. And I love the feeling of turning the page and not knowing what you're going to get next and what amazing thing you're going to experience, and going on a different journey with someone who doesn't even exist. But that joy hasn't always existed in my life. And recently I started thinking about why it is that I started reading and why I read. My journey with reading started, as it does for most people, around the ages of 4 and 5, and I was a really energetic and chatty child. I loved school, I loved going to see all my friends and talking to them. I was very friendly and you know, I just wanted to learn new things and you know, play with the other kids. This version of my 6-year-old self is one that I have been told by friends and family members. But the version of my 6-year-old self that I remember is the one that cannot say the word choir. Yeah, it's a bit strange, but we used to have reading sessions and you would read aloud to a member of staff at the school. And in the book I was reading, it kept repeating the word choir, and every single time I would say chore. And the woman, she was very understanding. She said choir, just to prompt me. And it just went back and forth like this, chore, choir, and I can laugh about it now because it's so ridiculous, but at the time, for a 6-year-old child, to have to keep on repeating a word and mispronounce it every single time is extremely humiliating, and you just get this sense of shame, like you're not really good enough and you'll never be able to read. And so it's sort of from that point that I got this notion that I wasn't really a reader. That said, it wasn't as if I didn't read at all. I did read Harry Potter and the Hunger Games like most kids my age, but it sort of just stopped there. You know, the Hunger Games didn't instill within me a great passion for dystopia forever. Probably far from the fact. I mean, I watched the movies, read the books, sort of stopped there, but I still really wanted to read. I was slightly jealous of other students who found it easier than I did, and in class a teacher would ask us to read something and we'd be given 5 minutes, and I've only read like one sentence and we were all meant to have read the whole page, and I found it really difficult, but I still wanted to read. And I remember I even tried to read The Great Gatsby. I think I was 12 or 13, and emphasis on tried, because I just gave up after about 20 pages. It was just like over my head. I had no idea what was going on, couldn't really understand the writing, let alone like the themes or what they were talking about. And I just got this impression that I wasn't a reader because, you know, I'd found these books that I really liked, and everything else was just not for me, not for me. Everybody else can be a reader, just not me. And it's really strange for me to think that now, because it is true that not every book, not every poem, not every short story is going to be the favourite thing of everyone. Not everybody's going to enjoy the same literature, enjoy the same books. But it's a bit like, you know, only going to the cinema once and seeing a movie you really hated and say you'll never, you know, watch another film. It's too early to judge whether you like something. And I recently calculated that by the time I was 12 or 13, I had read, with Harry Potter and the Hunger Games and all that, I had read 0.0001% of the books just in the British Library, and that's 13 million books, which is a lot, and I don't think I'll get round to all of them in my lifetime, but 0.0001%, and that is, the books in the British Library are only 10% of the books in the entire world. And that's not even including self-published books and other factual sort of journals and stuff. How could I tell myself that I wasn't a reader when I'd only read, you know, a tiny percentage of what is out there? It was completely useless, and every single day there are hundreds of books being published, and right now there are thousands of writers who are, typing at laptops and getting their thoughts down. And there was a writer, an American writer named Shirley Jackson. She was quite well known among journalists who believed she was a witch because she wrote these gothic horror stories where witchcraft features quite heavily, and they said about her that she wrote not with a pen but with a broom. And she used to goad these reporters and tell them that yes, I am a witch, and she told them that she used her witchcraft to break a man's leg. He had just so happened to be on a skiing accident, but it was definitely her witchcraft. But quite unfortunately, when she went to hospital to have her third child, this writer, the doctor asked her to fill in a form and asked her occupation. She says writer, and he just put down housewife. All of these stories about Shirley Jackson are incredibly important. Her legacy is important today. But the most important thing for me that Shirley Jackson did was in 1959, she published The Haunting of Hill House. And 60 years later, it changed my life. The Haunting of Hill House is creepy, to say the least. It is about a haunted house. It's suspenseful, and I just was so surprised to have enjoyed it. In fact, I cannot remember why I chose to read this book. I had a long period of time where I just didn't read anything, maybe except for the back of a cereal packet. And I just picked up this book out of, no real reason. And it just so happened to be, the best thing I'd read so far. I was so surprised that I could read it, and then the joy was another surprise for me. But what's interesting about this book is that if it came out in cinemas tomorrow, I had a front row seat, red carpet, free popcorn, I would not go and see it. And this book has been turned into loads of plays and TV shows and all sorts, but I will never watch any of them because this book, as it is perfect to me in its form. Like, the fact that it's a book is the reason that I loved it. What I realised when I read The Haunting of Hill House was that every author writes for different reasons, but every author has something to tell you. And so when I realised that by not reading, I was not listening, I completely changed my mind. And it sort of started a cycle. The more I read, the more I wanted to read. I got invested in stories that do not exist. I got invested in characters that, are completely unlike myself and completely insufferable, and questioning their decisions and questioning all sorts of choices by a writer, and yet loving it at the same time. And it was so empowering for me because when I was reading, I felt like I was sort of peering past the curtain of time and talking to somebody who is long dead, and their words still mean something because, I realised that we have all these technological advancements and these things come and go and chop and change, and, everything changes very quickly. But the human condition and who we are as humans practically stays the same throughout history. So all these sort of dusty old books that are written by dusty old people were actually just a mirror of the society that I live in now, which is quite revolutionary for me. And I just loved every new thing that I was reading. Even if it wasn't the best thing I'd read, I still loved it because it was something new. And what really sort of spurred me on was this curiosity, this excitement, that a book could present something new to me that I'd never experienced before. But something strange happened, and that was that in doing all of this reading, I suddenly wanted to read The Great Gatsby again. I had decided that I didn't like it previously, but in reading more, I realised that I needed to have a more open mind in what I was choosing to read and not go down a very narrow sort of rabbit hole of books that were very niche and specific, and that, you know, the whole point of reading is to open up your idea of what a book can be and what life can be. And so I realised that if I was going to keep reading, that at some point I would have to read The Great Gatsby. I mean, it's known as one of these great American novels, so I sort of felt like I, needed to see what all the fuss was about. And the surprise for me was not that I could read it, which had previously been the issue. It was that I really enjoyed it. I didn't realise that I could like something that I decided that I didn't like, which is very odd, but it's exactly what happened with The Haunting of Hill House and all the other books that I'd read before. I didn't know I liked them until I read them. If I had never read The Great Gatsby cover to cover, I never would have read this quote. "So we beat on, boats against the current, borne back ceaselessly into the past." That quote defines my reading experience until I found books that I really loved, until I searched beyond what I had previously known. And if it defines your reading experience, then I do believe that there is a book out there that was written for you. You just have to keep looking.